What's interesting about the Christian McCaffrey injury is that even without him, and he's the number one threat in their offense, anytime anyone faces the Niners, their game plan is shut down Christian if you can. Even without him, they have the number 2 rated offense in the league right now in yards. Last year, it was number 1. This year, number 2. So they're finding ways to, reinvent themselves. How do you think this can benefit the team, and how do you think they're doing without him?
Well, they're doing, I think where you see the missing, you see the difference from missing CMC is in the passing game and in the red zone. That's where you miss Christian McCaffrey. From a running standpoint, Jordan Mason is the second leading rusher in the NFL right now. They have no problem running the ball with just Jordan Mason. Where you miss Christian McCaffrey is, I talked about it before, he has that gravity, kind of like Steph Curry, but in the passing game. With Jordan Mason, it's not so much. And I think that's where you're really missing him.
Yeah.
But what worries me the most, maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but what worries me the most is now because they don't have Christian McCaffrey, all they have is Jordan Mason. It seems like they're doing what they did with Christian McCaffrey now with Jordan Mason. And they really need to make a move at running back there.
Well, I mean, before they did it to Christian McCaffrey, they did it to Elijah Mitchell. So it's sort of how Kyle Shanahan operates.
But like when they went on that Super Bowl run, they mixed it up, right? They had Mostert and the other guy. Like, get back to that. Get back to that. And I'm surprised they haven't made a move there. Like, go after a running back. There's got to be somebody out there.
I got some football history for you.
Okay.
So like 20 years ago, the Giants had Eli Manning. And he was good, but they were early in his career, they weren't doing a whole lot in the playoffs. And the offense wasn't built around him. It was built around Tiki Barber, who was really freaking good, especially later in his career. And like Christian McCaffrey, Tiki Barber was the kind of guy who would lead the league in touches, yards from scrimmage, touchdowns. Like, he led the league in touches in 2005. I mean, he was the offense. And then he abruptly retired after 2006. And if you remember, a lot of people wrote off the Giants like, man, what are they going to do without Tiki? Boom, they won the Super Bowl. That's the year they won the Super Bowl. Right after he retired, he was their best player. And all of a sudden, Eli Manning, I mean, they didn't have a great year, but he got hot. And it was his team all of a sudden. It wasn't Tiki's team. And I think that's an important evolution. You're not going to win a Super Bowl if your running back is the face of your team. If your running back is your best. It's just it. Terrell Davis did it. But who the hell? I mean, LaDainian Tomlinson couldn't do it. It just seems like you have to have your quarterback be the guy. And now finally Brock is in a position where he can become the guy. He's been the guy so far this year. They're 2-2. I don't know if they're going to win the Super Bowl this way, but this is how Eli did it too. Like, they'd have these mediocre freaking seasons, right? And then all of a sudden he'd get hot and he'd be playing like he had this confidence about him that even his brother didn't necessarily have. I feel like Brock's a little like Eli. I don't know. That's my parallel of the day.
I see the parallel. I do. It does seem like Brock's the guy, but I also wonder if Jordan Mason's name was Christian McCaffrey, would he be getting more attention and love than he is right now? If Christian McCaffrey was here doing the same thing that Jordan Mason is doing right now, would we still be saying that? I feel like some of the stuff is his name.
Or the same thing with Purdy, right? Like, Purdy doesn't get credit because he was a 7th round pick, and no matter what his numbers are, you're like, yeah, but. Right. And with Mason, what if he had just happened to be a 1st round pick? And then he goes off like that. You're like, man, this guy's the next Derrick Henry, isn't he? God, who runs harder than this guy? But right now, he's just another Bobby Turner, Kyle Shanahan creation, which is maybe true, but like, you can't coach a guy to run that hard and break tackles like that. That's a God-given gift.
No, and you make a good point in regards to Brock Purdy. He does. I have been thinking about that the last few days. You know, in the past, it seemed like he was, maybe the 4th, 5th best player on this offense. Right now, it seems like he's 1 or 2, probably 1. And that probably doesn't happen if CMC is here and if Brandon Ayuk is playing to the way he played last year. And if Debo was old Debo, it does seem like Brock is possibly the best player on this offense.
Also, he gets to be the playmaker now. Like, in the past, there would be a lot of pressure if 1, 2, 3 isn't open, check it down, get it to Christian, let him be the playmaker because he's great. And of course, he's a better athlete than Brock, but Brock gets to throw the ball. He gets to throw the ball forward. So when he scrambles around, there are bigger plays potentially. And it seems like now that he's not so eager to check the ball down and get the ball out of his hands, these extending plays, and some good, some bad, but mostly good. What I like about Brock Purdy, it seems like he doesn't make the same mistakes twice. Like in the Rams game, he had Brandon Ayuk open deep on a post, saw him, didn't throw it. Comes back next week, throws 3 of them, hits 2. I love that about Brock. As Jimmy just goes in the tank, he's not throwing posts anymore. Like, oh, that's good information. You could have told people that before you signed your contract. Brock actually doesn't run from his mistakes. He faces them head on. I like that about him.
In 25 games, Brock Purdy for me has gone from a guy I was like, is this the next Jimmy? Seems like a playmaker. Like my first view of him in preseason was like, seems like a playmaker. I don't know about his arm talent. Just like all 32 teams that passed on him, that was the issue. They were worried about his arm talent. But he did seem like a playmaker. And I was wondering if he's dink and dunk. To 25 games later, this dude's legit top 10, might be the best player on the offense. So Brock is really good. And I don't know if this happens necessarily without CMC. You're right. He's not dinking and dunk. He's not taking the dump off to Jordan Mason like he would if Christian McCaffrey was here. And that's another benefit. The other benefit, which we saw last night, and I was glad that we didn't see this focus. Seems like if CMC's gone, they focus on Debo. And they didn't do that in this game yesterday. They spread the ball around evenly, and that's another benefit, I think, of not having Christian McCaffrey there.
And I think what's interesting about Brock is you and I were both skeptical with him. And we're probably most impressed now with him when statistically, this is his worst stretch of his career. His best stretch was 2022 and then the first half of 2023. But in 6 of his last 8 starts, his quarterback rating's been below 90. 6 of his last 8 and 7 of his last 10. And it's like, that's not good. But if you watch, you can understand like, okay, but defenses have caught up to how the Niners are using him and he's having to adjust and Christian's out and like guys aren't as open as they used to be. And he's having to make plays. Like this is a whole adjustment process that Jimmy never made, that the best players make. Okay, I'm a target. I'm a playmaker. People are studying me, finding my weaknesses and doing their best to exploit them. Now I have to confront that. And he's doing it. I think that's pretty cool.
That goes to show you that these people that just throw out QBR and passer rating, you're not giving analyzation. You're giving statistics. I don't care. Jimmy Garoppolo.
Anyone can look that up. It's on Google.
Jimmy Garoppolo had great statistics. We know what he was. It's more about like what you see and the confidence. That was something I thought Brock was going to have coming into the season. I said it before the season. I think Brock's going to come in with more control and more confidence than he's ever had. And obviously that made sense. And I think you see it. And in this last game particularly, looked very comfortable, pushed the ball downfield. The interception didn't even bother me because he was stretching the field so much. They were already up. He took a shot. It is what it is. Wasn't a good pass. Ayuk was double covered. You don't want to do that. Obviously, you want to avoid that. But I like that gunslinger mentality. If you have a quarterback that's these guys averaged 29 yards a catch, 19 for Samuel, 24 for BA, 11 for Kittle, 18 for Mason, 12 for Juice. No one under 10 yards. So when you have an explosive offense like that and you throw a deep shot and it gets picked off, it doesn't bother me. It bothers me when you're dinking and dunking and throwing the linebackers and getting interceptions. But if you're stretching the field, it doesn't bother me at all. So I'm happy with Brock.
I mean, it would bother me if he didn't give the answer he gave. Like with Jimmy, if he throws that pick and you ask him about it, his attitude would be, guy made a play. I'm not accountable to you. Plus we won. Leave me alone. With Brock, it's like, I threw that pick and I hold myself to a higher standard than that. That pissed me off. I'll tell you exactly why I threw the pick. I got greedy. I was forcing it to Ayuk. Generally, I go through my progressions in a particular timing, and I was hitching and staring. It's not how I play quarterback. It's like, dude, I love you. Thank you for being so honest. It's almost like he's in confession at church. And what he's saying is like, I'm not going to do it again. And I believe him when he talks about it like that. I'm like, yeah, he's not going to do that again. And you understand why he's trying to force the ball to Brandon Ayuk. There's all this attention on Brandon and money and pressure. But you know what? That's not his problem. That's Brandon's problem. That's Kyle's problem. So if he ain't open, if he's double covered, keep it pushing. Scramble.
So not only statistics, QBR rating, the other thing we heard that's been squashed by this little stretch of 4 games by Brock Purdy is this whole quarterback wins thing, right? Your quarterback can play well and you still lose, or your quarterback can be mid and you still win. That, as well as the yak, right? Yak is a quarterback stat. We've been hearing that for 3-4 years. That's an offensive stat. If your receivers aren't the same, if your offense isn't being dialed up correctly, it's an offensive stat. It's the unit, and wins are a team statistic, and I think that's being proven wrong right now with what we see from the 49ers and Brock.
That being said, though, like when Purdy gets his contract and you're making $60 million a year, then the wins are very much on you because you're taking up so much of that salary cap space. And fair or not, I think we're learning, like Brock is learning how to win when he's the driving force. We know he can win when he's a supporting actor and it's all about getting the ball to Christian and just distributing. Like, he's great at that. But what if Christian's out and he has to, and they rush 3 and he has to make a play? Can he win that way? Like, we know he can be productive that way. He's proven it. But against the Rams, he lost. And he had that throw to Ayuk and he hesitated. And to me, like, he's learning how to be the catalyst of victories, and he's improving. Like, that's why I feel like he's a much better quarterback than he was last year. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the league catching up to him. I don't think it is. I think this is him catching up to the league catching up to him.
Yeah. The thing that I still want, so to me, there's still a couple things that I want to see from Brock Purdy. He has improved for me. Before the season, I had him like 8 to 12. To me, he's easily in the top 10. If I really broke it down and analyzed, which I haven't, he'd probably be higher than 10 if I really looked at it. I haven't done that yet this year because it's so early. But there's 2 things he still needs to prove to me and Kyle. It's really a Kyle and Brock thing. Brock is, 0-5 against 4 coordinators. And like Jesse pointed out, Kyle's 1-9 against those
Flores, Spagnuolo, Schwartz, one more.
Yep. And the guy on the
McDonald?
Okay. That they're going to see on the Seahawks. So those 4 guys, Kyle's 1-9 against, and Brock is 0-5 against. I want to see Brock Purdy and Kyle because it's both of them. Kyle's had a problem with those guys, so he needs to dial it up for Brock, and Brock needs to be able to handle it and adjust. I want to see those guys beat a good defensive coordinator like that because they haven't had success against that. That's one thing I want to see from Brock. The other thing I want to see from Brock is not against the Patriots, against a good team or just any team in general. When you have Brandon Ayuk deep for a game-winning touchdown like he did against the Rams, I want to see you pull the trigger and win that game. Those are the 2 things I like to see from Brock. They would put him up in the upper echelon, and I'd call him elite at that point.
And that's, to me, like why you can't call a quarterback elite after 25 starts, because he's still improving. We saw it from weeks 3 to 4. There's a moment in a game under pressure. He doesn't have 10 years of, I'm down 4 in the 4th quarter. These are the plays I have to like. It's not enough to be like, I made the throw to Ronnie Bell, he dropped it, we would have won. Like, nah, franchise quarterbacks make many throws coming back, and this isn't a position he's been in very much. So he needs experience. He has experience in college. He needs experience, this kind of experience. As he gets it, he improves. You see it from week to week. So depending on how he develops over the next few years, by the time he's 27, he might be elite. But calling someone elite before that age, man, you better be really certain about it. Like, even look at CJ Stroud, hell of a quarterback, but inexperienced, and is going to have weeks where he looks awful. And that doesn't mean he's awful, but it might mean that he's not quite yet elite.
There were people calling Jimmy elite because of his numbers, because of statistics, and
a small sample size.
Yeah, exactly.
Like someone like Stafford, it's like, man, I've been watching you do this since I was in college. You're in Detroit, and I can see like what you were bringing to that Lions team and how they held you back and what you add to the Rams team. Like, you are truly elite.
Yeah.
You've proven it over a very long time. Maybe some weeks Purdy's better than Stafford, but Stafford is better than Purdy. At least until Purdy gets a little older.
Yeah, and to clarify, because people get very sensitive when you talk about Brock Purdy, I'm not saying he can't become elite. He could do those things.
I think we're both saying he can. Yeah. And we see that. We're saying he's still improving, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He's still young. What is he, 24?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still young.
That's right. I think Montana won his first Super Bowl at 25. Something to keep in mind.